Hey, everybody, we are back. Thanks for joining us. Michelle Cohan, welcome.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, everybody, Robert Greenblatt here. So Michelle and I were recently involved in a transaction, and we're going to give you an example of three things. Here we are, three things that could go wrong in a real estate transaction or could be a challenge in a real estate transaction. And all three things happened in this one. And thank goodness you were handling the buyer and I was handling the seller. So communication was great,
Yeah.
but we still had a lot of stuff to unpack.
It was
Right? Yeah. And we had, I guess, fortunately in hindsight too, we had patient buyers who wanted the house, and we had a patient seller who was level-headed and understood what was going on. So there are three things. We'll start with the easy one. And in some transactions, this one easy one will destroy a transaction by itself, right? So I'll hit this one. I'll let you take the next one, Michelle. Well, on this one, so I don't know if you know this. We see this kind of stuff all the time as real estate agents, but there are a few different electric panels, like the breaker switches, guys, in your house, that were manufactured over certain periods of time that should be replaced immediately. And we're not that they're 75 years old. It's just there's a couple of different vendors out there that made panels that the inspectors and the electricians say replace it immediately. It's a fire hazard potentially, just by design. So they're bad. Well, this house had one of those panels.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the seller had no idea until the inspector pointed it out, and I had to explain it to the seller. And this was the easy one of the three, because essentially, even though we were selling this home as is, once I explained it to the seller, he was okay giving a fair credit to the buyers, right?
And it was good.
Yeah, buyers asked for a reasonable credit to replace the panel. It is a major potential safety concern. So we got through that with the credit. But truthfully, right, like some transactions, even that panel and the negotiation of a replacement panel doesn't go well. So we got through that one and we're like, yeah, let's go, man. Right? Let's go. Let's keep moving this towards closing. And then what happened, Michelle? What was another challenge that we had in this transaction?
We knew that this was an issue, but it became a greater issue because the septic we knew was bad. It was usable, but it didn't pass.
Correct. Right. So just so you guys know what we did when I met with the seller said, yeah, it hasn't been serviced in a long time. I really don't know the situation. And this seller, at the seller's expense, was willing to hire a professional septic company to come out, do a full inspection on it. Right. And then we knew it wasn't working properly and it was disclosed. We had a letter from the septic company. We disclosed everything. But what happened?
Township?
Yeah.
I only have to say one word. Township.
Township, right. So when a septic gets inspected and a report is issued, it goes from the septic company. They prepare their fancy report, and then it goes to the Department of Health. Board of Health, I think, right? Yeah. Board of Health for that county. The county looks at it and goes, okay, thanks. And then they take it and they go, here you go, township. Now you have a copy of it too. Now I think it's important for everyone watching this to know that the particular town this home was in does not have a lot a lot of homes with septic systems.
Correct.
So I think we learned that they weren't very familiar with septics.
Not at all, because what was the expression? They heard, not data, not on paper. They heard that it had to be part of CO.
Right. So in this case, the certificate of occupancy inspection, you guys have heard us talk about these things on other videos. It was the buyer's responsibility, or buyer's side of the transaction responsibility. And so Michelle took control of that process, made sure the house was ready based on the specs provided by the township. And then they had like a little issue with the way the numbers were on the house, right?
They said they were stick-on numbers when they were 100% on stick-on numbers, took a picture, sent it to township. Oops.
And the truth is, like, in my mind, like, why can't it be a stick-on number? Some of those adhesives are better than putting a couple of nails in the outside of the house anyway,
Nope.
you know? But whatever. So that's separate. So the township got a copy of this septic report, and they're like,
Right.
"Well, what are you doing about it?" And we're like, "Well, the buyer knows, and the buyer has plans to either replace the septic or possibly tap the public sewer, which was right kind of at the corner." And like you said, they said, "Well, we think," is that what it was? We think,
Heard. No,
we
they
heard,
heard
we heard it's an issue.
the
We heard,
possibility.
we heard it's an issue. Okay. Well, that's when the buyer's attorney got involved,
Yeah,
right? And he like read them the riot act in an
right.
email. It's like, well, what do you mean you heard? And of course, unfortunately, when we tried to get straight answers, well, that person's in a conference and that person's not available, and someone at the Department of Health, Board of Health, I always mix those up.
Or
Someone
Department
in
of Health.
the world of health for the county wasn't available either. Like, it was just like crazy. No one could give us a straight answer, and no one wanted to make a decision. And that was the frustrating part for us. Now we're like days past closing trying to figure this out. Buyers want the house, seller already moved out. Really frustrating. Um, and then at the same time, you're scrambling and you're getting multiple estimates, right, from different companies on how to handle the septic, which was really smart on your part. I don't even know if you realized what you were doing or what the buyers were doing in this case, but having those documents were possibly something that we would have needed anyway,
Sure,
right?
sure.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool. So we had the electric panel, which was a fire hazard. Then we had a septic system in a town that doesn't have many homes with septics, and then they were holding up the certificate of occupancy. Fire stuff was good. You got the right number, or you had the right numbers on the house, and whatever else had to be done was done. Now they're kind of holding it up for septic, and we think we're in the clear. We're
Nope.
getting closer to being the clear, but no,
No, you would be
no.
silly to think that.
Right. So they review the new survey, which is a map of the property lines for the guys who don't know what the survey is in real estate. It's a map of the property lines. And the township says,
Eh,
nope, shed's too close to the property lines. I go back to the seller, and the seller said, wrong, wrong, wrong. Not true at all. And the seller literally tells me in 19, let me see, they bought it in the 90s. I think it was in the early 2000s. They went in front of they knew the date. The variance committee got a variance for as-built shed.
Yep.
We did an OPRA request, Open Public Records Act request. It was expedited. We actually found the permit and the variance paperwork that said as built. And you know what the town said?
no.
Nope, not good enough.
Got to move it.
Their paperwork,
Mhm.
township's paperwork, said it was approved, and they said, nah, it's not good enough. It's still too close to the property line. Mind blowing. Like literally mind blowing, right?
And this was a huge shed. This was not a little shed.
210 square feet, madam.
It was
200. It was really,
buyers really wanted the shed.
yeah. And to complicate it, where it was built 25 years ago, the property line, the property kind of like sloped, right? So the township said, well, you could move it. And I'm thinking, well, I know a company that can move sheds,
Sure.
but it's not simple because of the way the property grading is. It's pretty complex, and it's a really big shed, like not a standard shed.
And it would have been on the deck, basically.
Yeah, it was just kind of like, like there wasn't a good option. And then they said, well, your other option is to get rid of the shed. Oh,
Sadness.
it was.
Sadness.
So it was really crazy. So then, you and I, we went back and forth and with our respective clients, and we agreed to a credit towards a new shed for the buyers.
Yeah.
And then one of our
plus the sellers had to pay for knocking the shed down.
Yeah. And just to give you guys an idea of the magnitude of that shed. So it was 210 square feet. Just to tear the shed down was a couple of $1,000 just to tear it down and get rid of the debris. So it was a very significant shed. Fortunately, one of the junk removal companies that we do a lot of business with, he was great. He was able to spring his team right into action, and literally literally from the time that you and I had said, okay, this is what they've agreed to, it was a credit towards a new shed,
Right.
and the seller is going to pick up the tab to tear it down. I
Right.
think it was 24 hours, and there was a dumpster in the driveway. And I think within 24 hours, he had a crew of 4 or 5 guys there.
Crazy.
Yeah, and a few hours later, it was gone. So it's so important. Like our vendor network is so important. The people that we do business with, we love those people.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. So we got through it. So literally any one of these issues could have sent any single transaction into a tailspin.
Mm-hmm.
This one that we just got through had all 3 of these. We had the bad electric panel. We had a disclosed bad septic. And the buyers obviously were not getting a mortgage. If they were getting a mortgage,
thank goodness. Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah, it was just like crazy.
Yeah.
And of course, we had a township that wasn't familiar with septic. And is that something that the township should be familiar with or concerned with? And sometimes yes, sometimes no. In this case, they let it go. We didn't have to have any affidavit signed or anything, right? They basically just issued the CO at a certain point.
That was it. Yeah.
And that could have been a result of the attorney really just pushing.
Yeah.
And then the township, I guess, realizing that it's not their concern. It's maybe a county health department concern, right? And
Hey,
then
they learned something, didn't they? So the next poor person, they know it. So
there may not be any houses left in that town with septic.
true.
I don't know. And then, of course, the last thing was the property lines, and different towns have different rules with this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the seller was sure that everything was approved, but it was like 20 years ago. We got the documentation that said it was approved on the township paperwork, and they still said no. And the seller was just like, I can't fight with the township. I give up. Like he was literally surrendering at this point. He had moved out. He's like, I don't know. And he did move to a different town.
Mm-hmm.
So he was just so frustrated. So thank goodness, this is where our business, what we call the co-op agent, which is the cooperating agent, the agent that we're interacting with in the transaction, becomes so important.
Absolutely.
Right? It's even better when it's on the team, right? We know each other. But if you're dealing with a great professional on the other end, you can get through these scenarios, right? Sometimes you can't though, because if the agent on the other end doesn't totally understand or want to get to the same place that you want to get, you may not get there.
And it's all with communication too.
Yeah, you're right.
Agents, sellers, buyers. I mean, thank goodness this one worked out the way it did.
Yeah, exactly. I think we had the right ingredients for this cake, right? Yeah, it was between, obviously it started with us, but even more importantly, we had buyers and sellers that wanted to make everything work, and everybody was level-headed and reasonable, and we knew that we were at the mercy of the township and everything else that we had to deal with. So we got through it. So great job, Michelle.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks. All right, guys, thank you for joining us. Please take a minute to like this video, share this video, subscribe to our channel. We really appreciate it. Michelle, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you guys again soon.
Take care.